What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone's doing well. In this video we are going to be talking about the character of Finn in the sequel trilogy, and this belief that the character was sidelined and he was initially intended to have a much bigger role than he was eventually given in episodes 7, 8, and 9. Now before I get into this, let me just acknowledge that this is a very controversial topic. Some people have some very strong feelings on it, and I understand that, and I respect where other people are coming from, but I have what I think is a bit of a unique take on this, or at least a point of view that a lot of people don't seem to voice. So first I'm just going to give my take on the character of Finn, what I expected from him for the sequel trilogy, and my take on where his story ultimately went. So in my opinion, the sequel trilogy was always going to be about Rey and Ben Solo. They were going to be the two main characters, and I do think Finn was supposed to be that third role. He was going to be the third biggest character. It was Rey, then Ben Solo, then Finn. And that's very clear to me, and I don't really think it's debatable. I think going into the trilogy, he was meant to be like the Han Solo of this trilogy. Not the Luke or the Darth Vader, but a strong supporting character. And ultimately, I do think that's what he became, but I will acknowledge that I do think his role was diminished in episode 8 and 9, and he was initially intended to have a bigger role. And he did have a bigger role in episode 7 that set him up for a prominent role in 8 and 9, and it turned out to be less than what fans were expecting. Now, I also want to say that I don't know if Finn was ever meant to become a Jedi. I know that there is some concept art of Finn with a lightsaber for The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker. I don't know how far that got in development. I don't really think that after The Force Awakens was complete, Finn becoming a Jedi was a very real possibility. Definitely not in episode 8, and really not very much in episode 9 either. Because in episode 7, Rey goes to Ahch-To to find Luke Skywalker alone. So that immediately sets up the arc for Rey to be trained by Luke Skywalker and Finn to be with the Resistance, doing his own thing. So episode 8, in my opinion, was never really going to see Finn become a Jedi. That was never really a possibility. The only true possibility was in episode 9, and after episode 8, episode 9 simply had too many other plot points to wrap up, and it did its best with Finn. It hints that he is force sensitive, and they could have left a couple of scenes in where according to John Boyega, they did film a scene where Finn does tell Rey about his force sensitivity, but as far as what was actually filmed and the plot points that they actually pursued in the story, I don't think Finn was ever going to become a Jedi in episode 9 either. I think they were going to set that up as a potential plot point down the road after episode 9, and they didn't end up going as far with that as some people may have liked, but it was still hinted at in the movie, and it's something that they can definitely pursue down the road. And with what we've been hearing, it does sound like they're going to pursue stories after episode 9 that are probably going to involve some sequel characters like Rey and potentially like Finn and Poe. So I definitely do think it's possible that Finn will become a Jedi. He will be the apprentice to Rey Skywalker. Now, contrary to what a lot of people think, I don't necessarily believe that that's what has to happen. I don't think Finn has to become a Jedi in any post-sequel content. I don't think like his character is automatically destined for that, but it is possible, and it's definitely something I'm open to, and I think that's important to keep in mind too. Like I said, The Rise of Skywalker did what it could do with Finn while trying to wrap up all the other plot points that it had to wrap up. It let you know that yeah, Finn is force sensitive, and this is a path that he potentially does want to pursue, so it's definitely something to keep in mind. I think the writers for episode 9 deserve their credit for that. It's not something that they just totally threw away. They just had a lot on their plate, and so the story that we got is what we got. Obviously, if the movie could have been longer, a lot of people would have liked that as well. There's been a lot of talk in the past of longer cuts of The Rise of Skywalker, and the reality that some rather important scenes were cut from the movie in order to shorten it because they didn't want it to run too long. But that's a whole different kind of rabbit hole we can go down. I'm not going to do that in this video, but I really do think that J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio and everyone who worked on The Rise of Skywalker really tried to give Finn the biggest role that they could, given what happened in episode 8. Not that episode 8 did anything terrible with Finn, but going back to episode 7 and addressing the reasons for why Finn was quote-unquote sidelined in episode 8 and 9, this is my take. First of all, the marketing, the promotion for episode 7 sort of set Finn up for failure, because you know, the trailers show Finn with a lightsaber, the posters show Finn holding a lightsaber. People thought Finn was meant to become a Jedi, but really that just turned out to be misdirection. It's very clear by the end of episode 7 that Rey is going to become the Jedi, and Finn is going to fit into a supporting role behind Rey. Alongside Rey, if that's what you want to say. To me, like in the original trilogy, Luke Skywalker is the main character, even though Leia and Han are very important characters. In my opinion, Luke's the main guy. Same concept here. Finn was going to be the supporting character to Rey. So that was the first mistake, the marketing. They made it seem like Finn was going to become a Jedi, and then he didn't. But in my opinion, Jedi Finn was not ever a really strong possibility. I'm not saying that there was no chance of it happening, but Rey was going to be like the Jedi, and Ben Solo, I think a redemption arc for Ben Solo was pretty much inevitable. I think ending the Skywalker saga with the last descendant of Anakin Skywalker having some tragic end on the dark side would be a terrible ending. So to me, Ben Solo coming back to the light was really the only way to go. It was just a matter of how they did it and how far they went with it. So Ben Solo was going to be another Jedi at some point in this story, and he was in episode 9, and that was pretty much always something that was going to happen, in my opinion, looking back at it now. And so Finn, again, was going to be the third fiddle to this trio, if you will, even though they were probably never really intended to work together for that much of this story. But there's a much bigger thing that I think happened that forced Finn into a smaller role in episode 8 and 9. And this is the thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about. During the filming or the writing or production process of episode 7, somewhere in there, Oscar Isaac went to the writers. This is a report that has been well documented. He went to J.J. Abrams and he asked if he could survive beyond the point that he initially was intended to die in the film. Poe Dameron was initially supposed to die in the crash on Jakku, and he was out of the story from there. JJ wrote him back into the story. He appears on Takodana when the First Order is attacking Maz Kanata's castle, and obviously he survives throughout the entire trilogy from there. And that is a very big and important change to consider. Poe Dameron, as he is written in episode 7, if he lives, is destined to be an important character. And so when you write him back into the story, he's clearly, again, he's not a character who's going to be on the level of Rey and Ben Solo, because they are the Force-sensitive characters who are going to lead this story. Ben is the grandson of Anakin Skywalker. Obviously, he's going to be one of the main characters. And Rey was clearly meant to be the protagonist to Kylo Ren and Snoke and the First Order. So Poe was going to be more of a supporting character like Finn, but again, he was initially not supposed to be in this story. So that role that is fulfilled by Poe and Finn was initially going to be just Finn. Not that Finn was going to play the same role that Poe did, but Finn was supposed to have a much more prominent role. And he doesn't, because the writers decided to bring Poe Dameron back in for episode 7, which forced the writers for episode 8 and 9 to reconsider Finn's role in order to work Poe Dameron into a prominent role in the story. And that's the big problem. And I don't have any problem with Poe Dameron's character. I'm not taking a shot at him, or I'm not even accusing the writers of doing anything wrong. I like episodes 7, 8, and 9, and I'm fine with the story that we got. But as far as Finn goes, and it's kind of funny to say this because Finn and Poe had a great dynamic and they were good friends in the movie, but Poe is the reason, in my opinion, that Finn had a lesser role than he was initially going to have, and then a lot of people wanted him to have. So it's really just a matter of personal preference. Would you have liked to see Poe Dameron die and have Finn take on that bigger role and potentially pursue a Jedi path because they had more time to weed out his story? Or do you like what we got? Do you like that Poe survived and Poe and Finn kind of play the same role almost? Like they're different people and they do have different roles, but even in The Rise of Skywalker, like they both fulfill the role of general for the Resistance as opposed to just one of them, because again, like this was meant to be, I'm trying to figure out a way to word this because I'm not saying that Finn was going to play the same role that Poe did in The Last Jedi, for example. But in The Rise of Skywalker, Poe and Finn basically play the same role, but it's played by two different characters. And again, that could have been just Finn. So yeah, I mean, that's my take on it. I enjoyed Finn's story. I think the Stormtrooper turned rebellion general, who also goes on to meet other Stormtroopers like him and sort of leads a Stormtrooper rebellion on Exegol against the Final Order. I think that's a cool story. I wish Finn had been expanded on a little more, not necessarily in terms of Force sensitivity, but just I wish we had gotten to dig a little deeper into that character. But at the end of the day, like I said, this story was Rey and Ben Solo's. It was always going to be that way, in my opinion, and they were my two favorite characters of this trilogy. So I'm happy with what we got. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think that Poe Dameron's return in The Force Awakens played a big hand in Finn's diminished role, or do you think it was something else and it had nothing to do with that, and Finn was just always kind of going to be sidelined for one reason or another? I hate using the word sidelined, honestly, because like I said, I think Finn played the role he was meant to play. It was just supposed to be a little bit bigger. And I think sidelined carries like a negative connotation, and I don't really like to do that because I think Finn was a cool character. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments section below. Again, I understand that this is a subject that gets some people rather upset, and so I tried to be respectful of everyone's opinions. I'm not saying that what I'm presenting here is definitely the truth, and that's the sole reason that Finn was sidelined, but I think it's pretty hard to deny when you have a character who's supposed to die come back into the story and play the role that Poe Dameron did. Obviously, Finn's role was going to take a hit, and to me, that's what happened. But again, let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to drop a like to support the channel, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, remember, the Force will be with you always.